Guys, we have made it to the end of the Championship season. The finale is on Saturday, and it could be an absolute cracker when it comes to deciding those final two playoff spots. Everything to play for in that position. Obviously, we had Bournemouth promoted in midweek. Congratulations to them. We've had Fulham wrapping up the league in emphatic style with that 7-0 hammering over Luton as well. All will be discussed throughout today's video, but I want to get your guys' input on this one in the comments down below. Who is making it into the top 6? Let's jump into my predictions. And we are starting out with a game which ultimately doesn't have all too much significance this weekend at St Andrews for Birmingham up against Blackburn, the first dead rubber of this weekend, but it does have a little bit of significance to it, whereby it'll be Tony Mowbray's last game for Blackburn, and every chance this is Lee Bowyer's last game in charge of Birmingham as well. The rumours circulating about his future are absolutely rife at this point in time. I'd be interested to get some Birmingham fans' perspectives on what they generally have made of his tenure in the comments down below. If we look at the form table for 2022, these two sides actually sat right next to each other in 20th and 21st place. It's been a real miserable new year for them. Blackburn 21 points in this calendar year, Birmingham not very much better on 20 as well. Blackburn's fate was sealed after the weekend when they lost 3-0 against Bournemouth. Obviously always going to be a bit of a tough game for them, and with the news that Tony Mowbray would be departing as well, it's all been a little bit of a whirlwind these last couple of weeks for Blackburn. You know, that fantastic performance away at Preston, they then couldn't make it into the playoffs after the Bournemouth game, and then the Tony Mowbray news. For this game, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see it ending as a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1 in this game. FIFA's going to agree with me. Could very much go either way, depends who turns up on the day, with neither side having anything to play for. Next up though, to a game that does matter, Bournemouth up against Millwall, and with how things unfolded in midweek, I think it probably played into Millwall's hands in terms of them needing to pick up a result in this one. Obviously, Bournemouth, congratulations to them. If you didn't see the instant match reaction we did the other day to that Forest against Bournemouth game, then make sure to go ahead and check that one out. Second half especially, Bournemouth were by far the team that was on top, and if anyone was going to go on to win that game in the second half, it was going to be them. Ultimately though, we expect that they may be in party mode already. You know, they can't win the league. Fulham have already wrapped that up, and they've sealed their promotion to the Premier League. So nothing riding on this one for Bournemouth, but everything for Millwall. And the interesting point is, you know, Millwall are going to have to play the goal difference in some aspect with how they're going to need to go ahead and scrape into the playoffs. They are relying on other teams above them dropping points this weekend, but quite a few of them have the, you know, potential banana skins. So Millwall need to get their job done in this one, and the only real potential sticking point for Millwall is the fact that their away record hasn't been great throughout the season. At the Den, they've been fantastically consistent all year round, but on the road, they've only won 5 away matches all season. There have been a hell of a lot of draws in there, particularly in this second half of the season for Millwall. So they're going to need to throw absolutely everything at this one, and I think they will. Bournemouth still have quality, don't get me wrong, and a pressured-free Bournemouth side can still come up with the goods in a game like this, but with Millwall needing a result, I'm going to back them for a 2-1 away victory, which would make things interesting for the other sides in and amongst the top 6. I'm going to go 2-1 Millwall. FIFA's going 1-1. That might not be enough to get Millwall in the top 6 though. Next up then to Derby up against Cardiff, another one of the dead rubbers for the weekend, but you feel like there'll be decent atmosphere in Derby for this one, to be honest. That was certainly the case for Derby's away trip to Blackpool. You know, the Derby fans in fine voice for that one, and the team producing the goods on the road for that one as well. A few of their youngsters particularly really shining through in that game. Coming up against a Cardiff side who they themselves don't have anything to play for at this point of the season either. They have lost their last couple of games on the road, Cardiff, both without scoring actually, and you'd think that with the atmosphere in that Derby ground, even with how everything's gone against Derby this season, I think that fan base has managed to stick it out together, and they probably do really feel the connection with this team on the pitch this season, despite their ultimate relegation to League One. So I think I'm going to back Derby to bow out on a positive to this Championship campaign. I'm going to back them for all 3 points and a 2-0 home victory in this one, with FIFA going 1-0 Derby. Next up then to Huddersfield up against Bristol City. Huddersfield's top 6 place is obviously already confirmed, and with how midweek unfolded with Bournemouth securing their promotion back to the Premier League, Huddersfield are out of the automatic race as well. They can still go ahead and finish above Nottingham Forest though, but I suppose it depends who Huddersfield are fancying themselves in the playoffs. But with those 5th and 6th spots still very much up for grabs, you can't really do all too much forward planning in that sense. Huddersfield on a good unbeaten run in the Championship at the moment. They're unbeaten in their last 6. Probably, you'd say, after Forest lost that game in midweek, coming into the playoffs as one of the form sides, along with Nottingham Forest as well. Bristol City, though, I think could cause some issues. They've looked decent recently. They've had that goal-scoring touch about them, put 5 past Hull, and Bristol City themselves are unbeaten in their last 5 Championship matches. I don't think Huddersfield will go at this one at 100 miles an hour, to be honest, with that playoff spot already guaranteed, and I suppose the only thing they have to play for is, potentially finishing above Nottingham Forest. So I think Bristol City could get a couple goals in this one. On the break, their forward 3 have been looking decent recently, but on the same coin, I don't see Huddersfield losing. So I'm going to go for a high-scoring 2-2 draw, a bit of drama and an entertaining one here on the last day. FIFA's going 2-0 Bristol City. And unfortunately for Nottingham Forest, it wasn't to be in midweek against Bournemouth, and it will be the playoffs for them. Another playoff campaign for Steve Cooper. Going to be a really interesting one to see how he sort of handles this Forest squad over that playoff campaign after how the previous 2 ones have unfolded for him at Swansea. But a bit of controversy in that game with the penalty not being given. We covered that in our instant match reaction. Certainly a debating point, but second half, and the Forest fans that I've spoken to, I don't think had any complaints about that second half. Really, it was Bournemouth who established themselves as the team on top, but they'll want to get back to winning ways, I feel like, in this game, to sort of get that Bournemouth game out of their system, and I feel like this is a decent opportunity to go ahead and do so up against a Hull side who don't have anything to play for. I think that Forest will be looking to establish a little bit of positive momentum back before that inevitable playoff campaign. And Forest fans, I'd be interested to know from you guys, who do you most want to play in that semi-final out of all the teams you could potentially get, because there are a few different styles you could come up against there. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Forest win in this one. FIFA's going to agree with me. Anything could happen on the final day though. Next then to Kenilworth Road for Luton up against Reading, and I'm sure there are a few nervous Luton fans around at this point in time, particularly after how Monday night unfolded for them. I don't think that many people expected them, maybe to pick up 3 points against Fulham and seal that playoff spot, but the manner in which they lost not only was a damning one in terms of, I suppose, the confidence which has taken a real shot with Fulham putting 7 past them, but it's actually the goal difference that has taken such a hit, to the point where I don't think a draw does them in this game anymore, because their goal difference is so vastly under par to Middlesbrough's, who obviously are going to look to get all 3 points at Preston. I feel like Luton need to go ahead and win this game. Now, what they do have in their favour is, I feel like out of everyone who's vying for a top 6 place this weekend, Luton probably have the easiest theoretical fixture. They've got Reading at home, they've got nothing to play for, and I mean, it's a Reading side who I think have quite a few of those players who are going to be playing in this one. Dare I say it, probably won't be at the club going into next season. It looks like quite the reshuffle is coming at Reading as well. But even then, they've still got players who can go ahead and hurt you. And I remembered back to a fixture the other day, a couple of years ago, where I think Reading put 5 goals past Luton at Kenilworth Road. I think that Yaku Mete scored 4 in that game. And Luton do just have these bizarre moments throughout the season when everything seems to crumble. A couple of games against Birmingham this season, for example. And the worry for Luton is the injuries have really caught up to them. Their squad against Fulham was looking quite threadbare, really, with, different players plugging different holes. Obviously, they've had to bring Matt Ingram in on an emergency loan deal as that goalkeeper as well. I do think Luton will get the job done here, but, a couple of those Reading forwards combine, Reading take the lead early on, things could get interesting in this one. I do think Luton will just about do it, but I don't think it'll be plain sailing. I do think Reading will get a goal in this one to make it interesting. I'm going to go 2-1 Luton though. FIFA's going for a goalless draw, which wouldn't be great for Luton. Peterborough up against Blackpool joins the Dead Rubber Brigade this weekend. Another game which doesn't have anything riding on it. Blackpool had actually been in decent form heading into these final few weeks of the season. Obviously, that Derby game didn't quite go to plan. That penalty miss knocking them back a little bit, and then Derby establishing themselves a little bit more in the second half. But I think we'll get a fairly even game in this one, to be honest. Peterborough have lost their last couple of matches matches, and obviously that relegation has already been confirmed. The Millwall game got away from them in the second half, but the Den's been a really tough place to go to this season. But even that one against Forest, they made it difficult for them at times. Forest were only able to escape with a 1-0 win, and I think that Grant McCann is quite eager to put a sort of positive spin on the relegation and, you know, try to build up a bit of momentum and a bit of a relationship with the fans heading into next season as well. So I've got a feeling Peterborough may be up for this one. Last home game of the season, they'll want to at least end it on a positive note after how everything's unfolded for them generally over the season. But Blackpool are no mugs either. I'm fancying the draw for this one. I'm going to go for a 1-1 with FIFA going 1-0 Blackpool. Next then to Deep Dale for Preston up against Middlesbrough. Now, as a North End fan, I'm really not sure which version of Preston's going to turn up this weekend. We ultimately have nothing riding on this game. We were all over the place against Blackburn, but we bounced back in quite decent fashion against Barnsley, albeit I know, you know, Barnsley isn't much of a feat to say you've beat them this season, but some decent interplay in and around the final third, and we looked a bit sharper in that game. And I have a feeling that Ryan Lowe's going to want to end the season on a positive note, particularly after how that Blackburn game unfolded. But Middlesbrough know that only a win will do for them in this game, and even a win may not be good enough if both Luton and Sheffield United win their fixtures. They are relying on a slip-up from one of Sheffield United or Luton this weekend, and there is a chance of that happening with, you know, Luton's recent tail off and the way they lost against Fulham, Sheffield United, and quite a tricky fixture they're going into against Fulham as well. And if Middlesbrough do win, there's every chance it goes down to goal difference, so Middlesbrough fans will be hoping for a little bit of a high scorer in this one. In terms of how I see the game unfolding, Preston had a really funny game against Middlesbrough early on in the season. It was when Frankie was in charge. We were totally outplayed for about 85 minutes of that game, and somehow we ended up winning it with a couple moments in the final third. I think Sol Bamba had a bit of a nightmare with one of the goals. I do think Middlesbrough will probably win this one, but I don't think we're talking by 3 or 4 goals or something like that. I still think it'll be a fairly tight game, which may or may not play into Middlesbrough's hands if they do lose out on the playoffs on goal difference in the end. Them and Sheffield United are currently neck and neck when it comes to that, but they're quite ahead of Luton. Score prediction, I think Borough will just edge it 2-1. FIFA's going 1-1. Will that be enough for them to get into the top 6 though? We'll have to wait and see. And the game which is going to have quite the influence on Middlesbrough's season is at Bramall Lane for Sheffield United up against Fulham. What a final day encounter we have going on between these two, because Sheffield United have got themselves into a situation where they need a result on the final day and they're coming up against the champions in Fulham. Now, ultimately Fulham don't have anything to play for coming into this game, but we saw just how hungry they looked in that game against Luton. You know, Mitrovic particularly, who I think will be eager to add even more goals to his tally at the end of this season. That I don't think Fulham will take the foot off the gas for this one, even though we have seen them sort of, you know, gearing down towards the end of this season. I think they'll be keen to go out on a bit of a high for this one, which doesn't play into Sheffield United's hands in terms of them needing a result this weekend, with both Millwall and Middlesbrough looking to knock them out of those top 6 places. It's an interesting one because Sheffield United have the best defensive record at home out of any Championship club this season. They've only conceded 15 goals all season at Bramall Lane, but coincidentally Fulham have the best goal scoring record on the road this season. They've scored 50 times this season, which is by far and away the best goal scoring record on the road. I think this is going to be a really tight one, and I think that it's tough because I definitely think Fulham are going to get at least 1 goal in this one, and Sheffield United have been a little bit stuttery in terms of finding the back of the net, although they did put 3 past QPR last time out. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this one, which might be enough to get Sheffield United over the line, but depending on Middlesbrough's result, it might not be. FIFA's also going for a 1-1. I think that'll be quite a tight game, you know. Stoke up against Coventry. There's not all too much to separate these two sides in the table. It's 13th going up against 11th, but I think that in terms of the general perception of how both these sides' seasons have gone, vastly different at both clubs. I think that Stoke is seen as another, you know, gross underachievement really, whereas Coventry certainly seen as a club heading in the right direction. I'm sure that all the Coventry fans are absolutely buzzing with the announcement of Mark Robins' new contract extension at the club as well. Done an absolutely fantastic job and year upon year have been building in the right direction. In terms of the second half of the season though, been pretty inconsistent for both sides. Coventry without a win now in I think their last 3 matches. Stoke themselves have been quite stuttery towards this final part of the season as well, but I'd like to think that heading into the final game week we'll get a decent game of football between these two, because at their best at times we have seen some cracking performances from these two teams. I think that both of them have a goal threat within them. I'm going to go for an entertaining 2-2 on the last day, a 4-goal thriller for this one, with FIFA going 1-0 Cov. Swansea's unbeaten run in the Championship came to quite the abrupt ending last weekend, with Nottingham Forest putting 5 goals past them, but I'm sure that Russell Martin will be keen to end this season on a high note, as Swansea have done for the second portion of this season really. I'm really quite intrigued to see how this Swansea side grows heading into next season. QPR themselves seem like a club who are going to be going through quite the transition next season, with this being the last game that Mark Warburton will be in charge of. He himself, I'm sure, will want to go out on a high. Obviously, it didn't quite happen for him that way in his final home game in charge of QPR. And this one's a tricky game to call really. It really depends which iteration of Swansea turns up for this one. Good at keeping the ball, have been scoring a lot more goals in the second half of the season as well. I think that in terms of consistency, it's probably Swansea who I'm backing towards here. Obviously, a meaningless game in the grand scheme of things, but I'm going to go for a 3-1 Swans win in that game, with FIFA going 2-0 QPR. And then to finish things off with the Hawthorns for West Brom up against Barnsley. Another game which doesn't have anything riding on it this weekend, and I think that both fan bases will be quite glad to see the back of this season, really, for different reasons, obviously. Barnsley have accumulated into a little bit of a mess, really, heading back towards League One, and West Brom have meandered into mid-table mediocrity, which they'll be looking to bounce back from heading into next season, obviously. Preston were at Barnsley over the weekend, and it was the youngest side that was fielded in the Championship throughout the whole season, actually, from Barnsley. A few more of their youngsters getting in on the act towards the end of the season. But I think with West Brom's experience, you know, they won last time out. Colin Grant's been hitting a few goals for them recently. I think the Baggies probably take this one. I'm going to go 2-0 West Brom, with FIFA going for a 1-1 draw. There we have it though, guys. Those are my predictions heading into the weekend. If all of them were to come true, Luton would go ahead and secure their top 6 place, and Middlesbrough would miss out on goal difference. Sheffield United would just about sneak over the line, and obviously Millwall would just about fall short as well. That's how I see it all unfolding, but the Championship final day is known for its twists and turns, and I'll probably get nowhere close. I want to know from you guys your score predictions, and most prominently, who is finishing in the top 6. Get your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching though, guys, and for tuning in this season. If you did go on to enjoy, do leave a like and stick around for some regular Championship content. Apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.